Donald Trump and Joe Biden get ready to defend their respective economic records, a group of Nobel Prize-winning economists has weighed in. They have written a second Trump term would have negative impact on the US economic standing in the world and a destabilizing effect on the US domestic economy. Apparently, Donald Trump's policies could worsen inflation, and they accuse him of fiscal irresponsibility. US debt has soared under both presidents. Donald Trump wants to extend the 2017 tax cuts and lower taxes on corporations. President Biden has proposed increasing taxes on millionaires and billionaires and blamed inflation in part on corporate greed. Professor Stiglitz, Joseph Stiglitz, is one of the 16 prize-winning economists who wrote that letter, signed the letter. He was an advisor to Bill Clinton. He's a good friend of ours and is always happy to have him on the programme. Professor Stiglitz, look, I'm not being uncharitable, but I can hear people saying, well, half these economists were all left-wingers and left-leaning to begin with. They would say that about Donald Trump.
This is a very heterogeneous group of economists, and there are very specific concerns that are usually concerns of the right wing. For instance, we worry about the rule of law. We worried about the imposition of tariffs, about the magnitude of the budget deficits. The concerns that various economists of our 16 put different things at the top of their list. All of them, though, were agreed that the policy mix and the experience that we had in 4 years previously were such as to really endanger our economy going forward.
I can hear Donald Trump using that famous phrase that Vice President Quayle used years ago, talking about the media. You may remember. He said, I wear their scorn as a badge of honor. He can turn this round and say, if these men and women are against me, I must be doing something right.
There are some circumstances in which that's true, but this is not one of them. The fact is that when you do the calculations, when you look at the consequences of his proposed increases in tariffs, of his proposed tax cuts for the billionaires, of his proposed deregulation leading to another financial crisis, deregulation exposing us more to climate change, of his repeal of the IRA provisions that would lead to higher drug prices, of his undermining support for science. All of these are pretty objective. I think any reasonable American would say there's a problem here.
Which for you, is the most worrying, bearing in mind, obviously, your great interest, obviously, in social equity and fairness?
Well, I think the two things are precisely the fact that the overwhelming consequence of his policy is to make the billionaires, the people at the top 1%, top 1/10 of 1% better off, and actually make the people at the bottom worse off. Besides that, it's the basic rule of law. And that is essential to the functioning of our society, but also of our economy.
Did you ever think, and not being, consider this a compliment, sir. You've been around a few elections in your lifetime. Did you ever think that you would ever sign a letter against specifically one of the candidates in the presidential election?
Well, I never envisaged myself facing a situation where the magnitude of what was at stake was so large, And the list of things that was, in economic terms, that were being proposed were so wrong. I never thought I would face a discussion of Republican that was against, that was centered around uh, uh, imposing tariffs, that was centered around a set of measures that would
Right.
increase the cost of living for so many Americans, that repealed science funding. Even his own Republican Party members disagreed with him during his first administration, but his second administration, where he's untethered, would lead a cutback of science that is the basis of America's leadership in the world.
Finally, the strength of the US economy. I'm in London tonight, and the British economy is not doing very well, and there's an election here. There'll be in France, and the French have got an election, and the economy is not doing very well there. And the German economy is in somewhat of distress at the moment, and Japan. Wherever I look, there is distress, distressed economies. As we prosper, and the prospect of lower interest rates. The US is doing the best of all, though.
That's right. And I think that's partly because of what President Biden has done over the last 4 years. The measures that he put in place soon after he took office gave the U.S. a stronger basis, a stronger stimulus than other countries had. It also lowered poverty rates among children in 1 year by more than 40%. And then he passed this infrastructure bill. Then he passed the Science and Chips Act to make our economy more resilient. And then he passed the IRA that has put us in leadership in the transition to a post-fossil fuel world. The fact of the matter is, the set of policies that have been passed in a very divided Congress has been very impressive, surprising, and is the reason why our economy is stronger than that of any of the other countries.
I'm grateful to you, sir. Thank you very much, as always, for coming on Quesby's Business. It's an honor for us to have you on the program.